This video looks at determining the equation of trigonometric graphs. So let's determine the equation of the following graphs justifying your answers. Now, whether you're going to choose a sine or a cos curve depends on its starting point, because the only difference between sine and cos really is a phase shift. So this graph here starts at 0, 0. So starts at 0, 0. So you would go for a sine curve, because that's what a sine curve does. You also know from its middle point, so you can see its middle point is the x-axis. So middle point is the x-axis. So that also means there's no vertical translation. But what I was going to be putting in is its amplitude is 2. From its middle point to its top point is 2. So your amplitude is 2. Because it starts at 0, 0, there is no phase shift. So the only thing left to look at is its period. So how long does it take to repeat itself? 2 pi on 3. So period equals 2 pi on 3, which is our 2 pi on our b value. So that means our b equals 3. Our axes are labelled y and x. So our equation is going to be y equals, our amplitude is 2 sine of the b 3x. And we are done. Let's look at the next one. The next one starts up the top. So it starts at 0, 0.5. So I would be calling this a cos curve. Don't deal with a phase shift if you don't have to. Now its middle point is the x-axis, so that means there's no vertical translation. Or no up and down movement. So its amplitude from its middle point to its top point is 0.5 or a half. So amplitude equals a half. Let's look at its period. How long does it take to return to that top point? Now we don't have our scale here. So now we have to think about, well, how are we going to get our scale for our period? What you should see is that half of that is at pi on 3. So that means its period is 2 lots of pi on 3. So 2 pi on 3 equals 2 pi on b, so b equals 3. Our scale is still y and x, so it's going to be y equals a half cos of 3x. Let's look at two more that are a little bit more complicated. So here I can see there's some kind of vertical translation. So I'm going to look at the amplitude in regards to the whole lot. So this, from the highest point to the lowest point, is 6. So my amplitude has to be 6 divided by 2 is 3. That tells me where my midpoint is. So my midpoint is here. Now I can think about, well, what kind of curve am I going to go for? It's starting at the midpoint, or at the intersection of my midpoint and the y-axis. So I'm going to go for a sine curve. Okay, so you have to think about it a little bit. So you're going for a sine curve, you know your amplitude's 3. What else do I need? I need the period. So period is pi. So period equals pi. Now pi has to equal 2 pi over b. So if I swap those over, that means my b has to be 2 pi over pi, which is 2. My vertical translation, should have probably done that before, but anyway. If you look at that midpoint, it's moved up 1 unit. So up 1 unit. So now I can write my equation. Y is going to equal, my amplitude is 3. It's a sine curve. My b was 2, so 2x, and I need a plus 1 at the end. Let's look at the final one. Let's look at that amplitude. So that's a distance of 4. So my amplitude is going to be 4 divided by 2, which is 2. So now where is our midpoint happening? Halfway is at y equals 1. Okay. Where is this curve starting? It's starting at the top. So I'm going to go for a cos curve reflected in the x-axis. So that means negative cos. Let's look at the period. Period is 4 pi. So 4 pi has to equal my 2 pi over b. Swap those over. So b has to be 2 pi over 4 pi. My pi's cancel, and that's a half. Now my midpoint moved up, so my vertical translation is 1 unit up. So let's try and put this all together. There's no phase shift, thank goodness. So my y is negative, amplitude is 2, cos of a half x, and I need to move it up 1.